This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Youth Service Project is celebrating 40 years of helping youth and families reach their full potential. Kenny Martin-Ocasio, their executive director, is here to talk about their programs, accomplishments, and their vision going forward. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
No, it's great to have you here. After some chasing me on the production side, I'm glad to have you here. You guys are a great organization. And
thank you.
Obviously, being around for 40 years shows that. So tell me about some of that history. What has Youth Service Project done in those early years? What did it do in those early years, and what has it done since?
You know, first we would have to go back 40 years in time and look at what the landscape of Humboldt Park was like. And what drove the founders to sit together and come up with this idea. And when you look at Humboldt Park suffering from what a lot of other communities were suffering, which was not having a lot of capacity to take in the young families that were coming from other countries because of economic reasons. And as a result of that, we had a surplus of children and youth that schools had no room upon which to teach them. Not only that, but because of a lot of them coming from Puerto Rico, the schools didn't have the language capacity to accommodate a lot of them. So you had a lot of children and youth whose parents were oftentimes both working, coming home from school and having little or no access to after-school programming, no safe spaces to go to after school. And many of them, especially in the 70s, falling prey to gang involvement or even gang violence. So that was sort of the genesis behind the need for Youth Service Project to exist. Reflecting back, I don't know that it was intended to last 40 years. I think we often feel that we hope that communities go through a process of improving quality of life indicators so that you don't have to have those programs forever.
So
but
you
here
would like
we are.
You would like for somebody to put you out of your job then?
Absolutely, that'd be great for us to say high school graduation is at its highest, juvenile delinquency is non-existent, teen pregnancy has been, eradicated. It would be great if those things happen because yes, organizations like ours wouldn't be necessarily needed, but it isn't the case, and so we are still here 40 years later, making a lot of impact and cultivating significant legacy.
Okay, so you mentioned some of those challenges that exist for young people, and especially in communities of color. Are those the main ones you confront, or are there other things that are going on now in the community that you're having to confront?
I would say at the root of all of that, and I would argue that this is applicable to all communities, poverty is the one or highest factor of risk for any of these issues that anyone experiences. And when you add to that all the other issues, whether it's documentation or language or single parent, or then you are in fact kind of seeding that and giving it more fuel for other things to kind of sprout from that.
Right. So it's poverty, and how does, I think we have an idea of how poverty might affect youth, or at least we think we have ideas, and what we think we see in the media, in movies, in our own ideas and conceptions of what poverty is. But how does it get into the everyday of people's lives? How does it get into the everyday of youth who live in these communities?
I'll give you an example that was actually quite heartbreaking for us. We had in our youth leadership program a youth that was in high school, graduated with very good grades, and was accepted into college. And his parents discouraged him from pursuing higher education because they needed him to now join the workforce and contribute to bringing income into the home. And it was heartbreaking to see them having to communicate that to him because he has and had dreams of his own to pursue, and to have those dreams either shattered or even postponed because of the economic realities of the home. It's very devastating. And so poverty hits us in many different ways.
Wow. And what happened with this person?
So he ended up having to, as we said, join the workforce. And
So he did. So he
been
didn't go to
working
college.
since, and he's been attempting to complete some of the general courses in community college. But it's quite different from having the advantage of having means by which to attend higher education and attend with a full curriculum every year and be able to 3-4 years later graduate with a degree that prepares you for even hopefully a better career.
Wow. That's certainly a great example. I don't think we think about poverty affecting people in that way. And I think what you're also pointing to is the mentality. It's a survival mentality. It's not that I think poor folks don't want better things or have dreams, don't have dreams. It's the fact that it gets into how they see themselves and how they think of their lives, and it's everyday survival.
Right.
So Youth Service Project, obviously for 40 years, has been working to help people see themselves differently. Tell me about some of those the programs that exist for that. You have a variety of programs, and what I really like is you say youth, but you also say families because everybody's connected.
Right. And the name of the organization is Youth Service Project. We do serve children, youth, and families, and we are cognizant of the fact that the youth live not in a bubble, but in a community in which all of these folks play a part in their development. Our role as sort of agents of change and motivators would not be very effective were it not for the support that we hope to get from the parents. So they ought to be included, they are included, and they are an integral part in what we're trying to do as well.
How do you include them?
We offer either education groups or support groups, or we invite them to our festivities, or we share with them where we're at with the work that we're doing, so they gain an appreciation of what we're trying to do. Again, because it is important that since they spend more time at home, that whatever little time that it's spent at the organization, on site, is impacted fully and resonated and endorsed at home as well.
Have any of these parents you've worked with become a larger part of Youth Service Project, or taken on something in their own lives that because of what they lived or saw in their children through your Youth Service Project?
Actually, what is important to note is that many of the parents that we have today were participants themselves.
Wow.
Some years ago. So that speaks of many things. One, of the impact of community work. Two, of the legacy and the impact that an organization like ours can have, and the credibility that it gains by having parents themselves say, I was helped, this helped guide me, and now I want it to help guide my children. So to that end is remarkable to know that the longevity of the organization is so predicated on the impact that we've made 20 years ago and that we continue to make. So to that end, it motivates them even more to become more involved in volunteering with us, and helping recruit for us, and being active members of our mission.
And talking about volunteering, how do you do? I mean, obviously, it speaks very well of your organization to have people that were around 20 years ago and now bringing their children. But how do you go about recruiting children and other youth into Youth Service Project? Is it through the schools, or is it door knocking, word of mouth, or a combination of everything?
The recruitment efforts have changed significantly with social media and technology. There were times when, yes, the good old leaflets and door knocking was of essence. Nowadays, even when we have a new program starting, all we have to do is put it on Facebook, and we have a significant number of followers that will immediately broadcast it to their own networks, and before we know it, we are blessed with a number of participants registering. So that has been a great tool for us to use. Schools, definitely. We have a great relationship with all of our neighborhood middle and high schools, so that continues to be a great funnel for our referrals. And as I said, just word of mouth based on experiences that people have had that makes it valuable enough for them to say, this is something that my neighbor can benefit from, my niece, someone I may know.
Okay, and I'm thinking about these young people that come in. You gave me an example of, unfortunately, of one young person who went through Youth Service Project and had to make some difficult choices. I'm sure there are some young people that, and well, you didn't give me one clear example, but obviously the impact is being felt now from 20 years ago. But some of the young people from recent generations that have come through your doors that you've helped, that you've seen them like transform or actually just be who they were meant to be. Can you give me some examples of them?
One of our staff members was a participant himself.
Oh, really?
And so he saw the benefit of doing that and what he got from that, from his involvement in the program. And nowadays he's one of our crisis intervention team members. And actually we are now getting more and more either students or youth leaders that are participating in new programs that were themselves children participants in previous programs. This year, because of our 40th anniversary, we have been reconnecting with a lot of alumni that whose lives we've touched, and it's amazing to see how many people accidentally or purposely we impacted. And so we are continuing to gather information about them. We want to get more testimonials from them and share that with the rest of the community.
Well, where are these alumni? Are they all over the country?
They're all over the country.
Or
Ironically,
world?
they're all over the country. You know, we found one who is an architect, and he is a partner in a firm, and he himself has kept in touch with some of the alumni from his year, from 25 years ago.
Wow.
And many of them are in other parts of the country as well. So it's very, it's extremely rewarding to know and humbling to know that the impact is so widespread and so deep and so long lasting.
Yeah, definitely. But you mentioned something that an alumnus now is also a crisis intervention worker?
Team member, yes.
Team member. Tell me about that, because certainly because of poverty and other issues that connected to poverty, people do come in with maybe a host of issues or one very difficult thing that they've lived through. And I've taught myself. I've taught junior high students. I've taught high school students, and even children. And I know that they're honest. What they're going through just comes out. They don't hide it. So how does Youth Service Project, with their crisis intervention or other programs and services, help these young people navigate those difficulties?
Sure. And yes, crisis intervention is one of many of the programs, and that one is particularly aimed at children or youth primarily, who are experiencing issues at home, and as a result of that end up being locked out of their own homes. Okay. Parents either are having way too many issues or too many challenges disciplining, containing, aiding, helping, parenting, and the relationship becomes so strained that sometimes it's not even safe anymore for them to live in the same household. So that's when our crisis intervention team comes in and finds alternative living arrangements and assesses what are the safety issues and how can we remedy this so that we can maintain the family intact. But we also have the Youth Workforce Development Program, which is not only based or focused on work, but on career overall. What is the importance of education? How is education an investment? And how does it sort of dictate the next path into work? We have the Youth Leadership Program. We have programs for juvenile justice.
Tell me about youth leadership, because I think I remember being a teen and not always seeing myself as a leader. And I'm sure, you know, you're still at an awkward age. You're like trying to figure out who you are, where you fit. How do you help develop this mentality, these skills of young people for them to see themselves as leaders?
I think part of that requires that we understand leadership in different spectrums as we have before. It isn't about the person who always stands out, speaks the loudest, and moves the boldest. It is about those youth with ideas that are important enough that move agendas forward, that address issues, that solve problems. And they don't necessarily have to be the loudest in the room or the tallest. They can be someone with great, bold, audacious ideas, and they just want to have guidance in formulating them and helping making them from ideas a plan to carry.
So how does that happen? Does it happen in small groups or?
In any modality that serves the youth best. So we try not to prescribe things that work, but rather to understand from their perspective what works. And some of them, they enjoy and or benefit most from modeling after others. Some of them require, because of other issues perhaps, some individual attention. Some of them require a whole host of them because they're at different stages in their lives. Like you and I may be at different points during 1 week. They may experience the same thing. So they know how to sort of access that from us, and we know, based on the relationship that we cultivate with them, what are their needs at any given time, and how that sort of helps path or track down the path that they'll take.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is that there is a high amount of listening and sensitivity built into your programs, into your youth leadership to respond appropriately to all these different individuals.
Right.
So when you are responding, or I'm just curious, do the youth workers from Youth Service Project get together and say, well, this is what we're seeing in this person, or I kind of noticed this, or how does that happen?
It is a very team kind of approach. It's not, we don't have youth coming into one specific program. We have youth who come to the organization at any given time in their development, may be interacting with any given program because of the needs and or strengths that they bring. It's not just about looking at deficiencies, it's about looking at what makes them stand out and what are some of the strengths that will make them sort of shine through this. And so we don't look at ourselves as empowering youth. We have issues with that term. Power is not something that is ours to give them. So we help them navigate through their lives by helping them understand their own strengths that they bring and acknowledge the obstacles that they may encounter.
Okay. So you mentioned you have crisis intervention, you have the youth leadership. What are the other?
Juvenile justice.
Tell
we have
me
a
about
very
that.
good program, not only with youth that are about to enter the system, but youth that are coming back from the system, that are having difficulty reintegrating into the community and understanding, well, now that I have been in that juvenile system, in that justice system rather, how do I is there room for me in the community? Do I belong in a school? Do I have a chance to get a job? Do I have a chance to graduate? Do I have a chance to stay safe? Because safety continues to be a very important issue in our community for many of them. So it's looking at all of those factors and then looking at, is their current family situation one that will help affirm all of those things?
Wow. That I find that program actually, it seems to me to be responding to a great need out in the community, and especially what I've heard during this, I've been hearing during this mayoral election. A lot of the term thrown out there was restorative justice,
and that is part of the model that we have.
Tell us exactly what that is, because that is, for our viewers, that is a term that's been used a whole lot, and I think a lot of people, including myself, a lot of us don't have a full understanding of what that means.
Well, a lot of it stems from this idea that any one of us is one action away from being involved in the justice system, and that somehow suggesting that the ilk of those involved is different than that of those that are not is disingenuous. And that if it is mostly about decision making and not character, then we ought to first admit that and then formulate plans and programs that embrace them as our neighbors, as our community residents, as our members of our community as a whole, and begin the process from there.
Okay. So You said that how yours works. When an individual comes out of the juvenile justice system, it's about reintegrating them into society, and finding what if their family isn't a place where they can find safety and development.
And sometimes it isn't, and that's
Mhm.
part of what we have to figure out.
Mhm.
What choices do they have, what limitations, and what vehicles do they have to move them forward?
Mhm.
So that's part of what we try to do, figure out, are there alternative living arrangements? Are there other communities that are safer, because the community that they left perhaps hasn't changed much
Right.
to the community that they're coming into, and safety continues to be an issue for them because of previous gang affiliation
Right.
or even the family structure. We have to examine all of those things and help them make better decisions about, and help them have a set of options that they can then select around safety.
Can you give me an example without using anybody's name or clear examples of who they are? An example of a person that you helped through the juvenile justice program that you have.
We have one of my sort of our stellar program participants. He has been with us for 2 years, and he came through the reentry program. And I remember when he first came to visit our agency for program time, he would often walk with his head down. He would often not look at you in the eye. He carried a lot of shame in the way that he walked and behaved. 2 years after that, he's now running one of our more successful programs, which is the recording studio.
Oh, wow.
He goes and recruits youth from the neighborhood. That is what he likes to do, audio engineering. And to see that transformation has been one of the most remarkable experiences that I've seen.
Wow, we're getting close to the end of the show. I want to ask you now, and thank you for sharing all that you've given us so far. It's amazing work. Now, where do you see Youth Service Project in 5 years and 10 years? You're celebrating 40 years this whole year, but obviously there's still work to be done.
I think, and this is despite all the pending budget cuts that many of us are sort of awaiting, we continue to see ourselves as a beacon of hope and work for youth development in the community. And we've overcome a lot of other obstacles. So budgetary constraints is not something that's going to stop us from doing the work that we do. And so our role in the community continues to be, and will continue to be, one of great significance. And so we'll continue working on encouraging youth to remain in school, training them so they can get better jobs when they leave, aiding them with mental health issues, navigating them through their own leadership paths. And so there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and we're aiming to do it.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for coming out today, and well, good luck on your 40, on what goes after the 40 years.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And to you, thank you for watching Perspectivas Latinas. It's a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune in to Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.